In this short video, I'm going to be talking you through the key aims and content of our reading curriculum at the Kite Academy Trust. I'm also going to try to give you a sense of what happens in our reading lessons and the opportunities we give pupils to read the books they choose throughout the school day. As a primary multi-academy trust, at Kite we understand that reading is the most important thing that we teach pupils. Reading is fundamental to their education and vital for every pupil's success. And we know that pupils who find it difficult to read are really likely to struggle across the entire curriculum, since reading is both a subject in its own right, but also a medium for teaching other lessons. Therefore, as a trust and in every one of our academies, we are committed to ensuring that each and every one of our pupils leaves Year 6 able to read fluently, having read widely and reading well. I'm now going to take you through the overall aims of our reading curriculum, which is there for all pupils that have shown they've mastered the phonetic code in Year 1. First and foremost, the curriculum is designed to ensure that every pupil that has secured the code is able to read increasingly complex and whole texts. Next, it's designed to ensure that every pupil's automaticity, fluency and prosody improves as they journey through their time with us at Kite Academy Trust. We want to expose pupils, thirdly, to a variety of important, significant prose and poetry, so when they leave us, they can talk on some of the seminal works of children's literature, whether they enjoyed them or even whether they didn't. And we want to foster and encourage strong habits of reading for pleasure. We want to make sure that our pupils go home and read before they go to bed, or sit on the sofa at the weekend with family and share a book. And finally, through being exposed to a variety of high quality texts in the reading lessons and beyond, we want to develop and deepen every pupil's vocabulary so they can articulate themselves clearly and with purpose, no matter who they're talking to and on what subject. Before we go any further though, it's probably important just to establish what reading is, because it's quite a complex concept. Goff and Turner in 1986 did a really good job of helping the world understand this with their simple view of reading. And what this says is that any person's word recognition, their ability to decode the alphabet, multiplied by their language comprehension, their understanding of metaphor and punctuation and vocabulary, and knowledge of the context and literary structures, will give you their reading comprehension, their ability to read. Some years later, Scarborough expanded on this with what's now referred to as the reading rope. And here you can see that concept of language comprehension and word recognition entwined and working together over time to develop skilled reading. Just take a second to read about all the factors that sit within each of those areas. But of course, we can only become increasingly strategic and increasingly automatic and develop our skill as readers if the thing we're reading is progressively more challenging. It's unlikely, if we're reading the same books in Year 6 as Year 1, that we'll become better readers. So at Kite, we believe that the texts we select for the children to read in their reading lessons and beyond are the reading curriculum, are their reading curriculum. So at Kite Academy Trust, we've spent a long time selecting and sequencing the texts that our children read as part of our provision. And every time we choose a book or piece of poetry, we ask ourselves, is it harder than the one they read last? And when we're talking about difficulty, we're not just talking about whether or not the words themselves are harder to decode, but is the vocabulary more ambitious? Is the punctuation and grammar slightly more complex? Are there themes that they may not have encountered before? Is there figurative language being used? Is there metaphor or rhetoric? And all of these things come together to provide extra challenge for our pupils, to make that text a little bit more difficult than the one they read last. But of course, we need other lenses to select books from, because lots of books are more difficult than others. So then we ask ourselves two other questions. Is this book culturally significant? Is it an important piece of children's literature? Should children have read it during their time in primary school? Or does this book speak on themes that are important to our pupils, to our families, to our area, to our trust? Does it tackle concepts like family, or resilience, or inclusion and respect? And all these things come together to help us make choices about the books that children are going to read. And what we've used to create what we call the Kite Cannon, a sequence of books of poetry and prose that every pupil will read during their time with us in our academies. And of course, each year we reflect on it and make some changes based on the feedback from our pupils and teachers. And here is our current canon. No doubt it'll change by next year, but as it stands, these are the texts that your children will read when they're with us. Now, of course, this is just a small version on a slide, so please click the link next to this video to have a real look at the text that we've selected. I'm going to spend a few seconds just talking you through the difference between core and secondary text for each year. Here you can see in year 2 I've highlighted the core text. The core text are the books they're going to read as part of their reading lessons. You can see in year 2 here they begin the year reading The Secret Garden together, then they enjoy Oliver Twist. Following that they look at the Greek myths, Ice Trap by Meredith Hooper, and finish the year reading King Arthur. And then you'll also see what we call the secondary canon. These are texts that are super valuable and super interesting and are read by the teacher at the end of every school day with the class, so they can enjoy and discuss them before they go home. These secondary texts are not limited to what's on the canon, and all of our teachers have the autonomy to select texts that their children and themselves enjoy. But of course, reading cannot and should not be limited to reading lessons. And so we ensure that reading is part of all of our subjects, that it seems a gateway to knowledge no matter whether you're studying PE or geography, history or science. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our reading lessons themselves. And at the heart of our approach is this concept, this idea that Stanovich and Nathan settled upon. If children want to be great readers, they just need to spend a lot of time reading. And we know that many of our children do just that at home, before bedtime and at the weekends. But we want to ensure that when every pupil is at our academies, they have the opportunity to read regularly and for sustained periods, so they all develop strong reading habits. So here at Kite, we made the decision to separate the traditional English lesson into 2 separate lessons that every pupil gets to enjoy every single day. In all of our academies, reading and writing are their own lessons. And this is important because although they share content and share learning, they are also separate skills in and of themselves. I'm going to talk to you now a little bit about our reading lessons, how they're structured, and what you can expect your child to do every single day in one of our academies. The structure of our reading lessons is simple and consistent. Every single day, for between 35 and 40 minutes, all of our pupils will enjoy their core texts with their peers and their teacher. And in each lesson, they'll go through 3 simple teaching phases: the I phase, the we phase, and the you phase. In the I phase, the teacher begins the lesson with the pupils, reflecting on what happened before, connecting the chapter from the day before to the one they're about to read, and also connecting some of the ideas in that chapter and in the book they're reading to other books they've read before, and telling the pupils about how it connects to books they're going to read in the future. The teacher will also read out loud the first few pages or chapter that they're in, demonstrating to the pupils how to read with prosody, fluency and automaticity, whilst also modelling what you do when you encounter a word you can't decode or a word you don't understand. They'll also model for the pupils how they answer questions about the text, thinking out loud for the pupils to hear as they solve a question that is posed about the themes or ideas of vocabulary in the section they've just read. Once the text is warmed up, we move into the most substantial phase of the lesson, the we phase. And during this phase, pupils take turns reading out loud to the rest of the class while the rest of the class read along. This is an incredibly important part of the lesson because this allows the teacher to listen to every single child read and allows them to garner information on that child's confidence and challenges in their reading and then support them with that. This prolonged section is peppered with questions to ensure that all the pupils are reading along with the main readers and also keeping track of what's happening in the text and understanding the meaning in the text and analysing some of the ideas. And finally, in the last part of the lesson, pupils have the opportunity to read quietly on their own and to demonstrate their own understanding of a short extract of the text. This the teacher will mark so that they can leave the lesson knowing where all the students are and what to plan for the next day. And on the subject of planning, let me talk you through how our teachers plan for each lesson. Here you can see an example of a prepared text. Every page that children read in a reading lesson has been prepared in this way by their class teacher the day before, based on the information they garnered about each pupil's confidence and ability in reading. You can see on this page the names of pupils, fictional in this instance, against sections of the text they're going to read. You'll notice they all read similar amounts of text out loud to the class. This is because every child should have the opportunity to read the same amount, and the difficulty should come from the piece of text or the extract they're going to read. You'll also see the lines are numbered, and this helps when our teacher stops the reading to discuss ideas in the text vocabulary. They can pinpoint the children as to where to look for clues and ideas around the answers to the questions they may pose. You'll also see underlining annotations at points where the teacher is going to ask a question to the class about the text. And this is done for every page of every book, every single day before every lesson, so that each of our pupils has equal opportunity to read and understand the text in front of them. But of course, reading at the Kite Academy Trust does not and cannot stop there. We know that many of our pupils read frequently at home, whether it be at weekends or before bed or even first thing in the morning. But we want to ensure that all of our pupils develop really strong habits of reading for pleasure. And we know from speaking to them that COVID in particular has impacted on their home reading habits. We've also learned that they want increased opportunities at school to read their own text, to choose their own text, and to talk about the text they read. And so from this year, we've made the decision to make alterations to our daily timetable to offer our children the opportunities they require, and they'll need to develop strong automatic reading habits at home. The first significant change we've made to our timetable this year is to introduce Read for Pleasure slots. Straight after lunch, as pupils return to class, they get to spend 5 to 10 minutes reading a book of their choosing quietly whilst registration happens. The teacher themselves will complete the register, and then they also will have an opportunity to read a book of their choosing, demonstrating to every pupil in the class that reading is important for all of us, and that these habits continue into adulthood. Just before the session ends, the teacher will take the opportunity to speak to 1 or 2 pupils in the class about the books they're reading, learning about what they're enjoying, what they're not enjoying, and garnering information that's going to help them select more appropriate books for their class and school libraries. And then at the end of every single day, we also ring-fence 10 minutes of story time for each and every one of our pupils. During this time, the teacher will read to the class a text from the secondary canon or that the teacher and the class have chosen together. And the teacher will read with enthusiasm, expression and gusto, so that every child ends their school day lost in the stories that they enjoy. And finally, each of our children needs the opportunity to choose books and to talk about the books they've read with their class. And so we guarantee that all of our pupils have those regular opportunities to visit both their class and school library to make these choices and to talk about the books that they've been reading. And so that's a little about our reading provision at the Kite Cannon Academy Trust. Of course, we haven't covered everything, and you may well have 1,000 other questions you want answered. I'd encourage you to spend a little bit of time with our reading canon, but also to get in contact with the reading lead or teaching and learning lead at your child's academy if you have any more questions, and they'll be more than happy to spend time with you talking about what we do. Thank you very much for your time.